We should probably check to make sure that's working. How will we know if that's working?
What?
The cameras.
Because we'll see us clap. So we'll see us go like this. So I'll sync that exact clap with it.
Oh.
So now we'll be exactly in sync.
You can tell we're rookies. Yes.
Welcome, you guys. This is our very first podcast, our intro podcast.
Yes.
Well, first of all, let's just say welcome to Set the Standard with your host, Genelle, and
Dad? I'm going to be dad. That's what I'm going to be.
So he can be dad to all of you guys out there listening.
That's right. I'm the dad.
He's the advisor.
Well, it's a combo effort.
Yes.
Is what it is.
So basically today with our intro episode, we wanted to just get into why we started this podcast, our mission behind it, maybe some topics we're going to be covering in the first few episodes. I guess we'll just start with why we started, and I'll have my dad share first why he maybe decided to get into this with me, and then I'll kind of tell you guys why I'm here doing this as well. So,
it's interesting sometimes in life when you say, one day we should do that. You say that with friends or whatever, and you kind of go, yeah, we should do that, or hey, we should start a business. And most people don't follow through with that. They just kind of, yeah, that's a great idea, and so on and so forth. And so I think it was a couple different times Genelle and I said, we should do a podcast. I may not have shared this with Genelle, but long time ago, long before there were podcasts, I had always thought it'd be cool to, be a speaker, if you will, motivational speaker, that kind of thing.
You said that.
Yeah, and I didn't know what medium that would end up being. Whether it be, I thought about writing a book. That's a big effort to write a book. Thought about just maybe doing something around health, and presenting around health, different things like that, things that obviously I'm passionate about, that you're passionate about, as you've, I've watched you grow up in front of my eyes. I see a lot of the similarities, and you have the same passions that I do about a lot of these things. And so I think that as a result of now you living a portion of life, you've experienced a wide variety of things. As a result, you've had a lot of questions about these things, which is great. I think that's lacking today. I don't think people ask questions and seek advice to learn. Well,
it's hard to hear the truth from people, sometimes.
Well, that's true. You talk to friends, of course, and, and wherever you get that info, Google it. Listen, the news today has a lot of information. And so I think when we were, as you had gone through some various life-changing events, certainly I have too, which will be part of what we'll discuss throughout these episodes, is that, hey, that's some good information. I learned from you, you learned from me, had a chance to speak with some of your friends. Mm-hmm. And, we felt as though there was maybe an opportunity to give perspective from your point of view and sort of your age group, if you will. Although I think your perspective comes not necessarily from your age group, but just a wide variety of sources. So I don't think you give just your current
age group.
Someone very close to us just passed recently, and we got perspective. This person was 92 years old, was my mother, and she had a perspective that was kind of neat because of the time of life that she lived, and that was another driving force, I think, behind saying, we should probably, capture some of these thoughts, these conversations we're having, and share those with other people, because I think we felt like there was something there. And we're not saying we know everything. We're not trying to suggest that.
We're not doctors yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it was more just like, hey, maybe someone else could benefit from this. So we're really here to, from a mission statement perspective, or kind of what our goals are, is to share some thoughts around, just general things that everyone goes through, whether that's your relationships, your spiritual thoughts, or what you're trying to seek there, health, and within that, the subcategories of family and friends and dating, and do I exercise too much, not enough, eating, look at all the discussions we've had about eating and drinking and not drinking and, positive thinking, how the world beats you down, and man, on and on and on. So we started to make a list, these categories, and we were like we brainstormed. I didn't even think it was an hour, and we had like 50.
Oh my gosh, it was so much. Well,
Yeah.
I like kind of how you last ended the kind of wrap up of as to why you wanted to kind of get into this, because that's kind of my wrap up. So to start, I'll say this, my dad and I have been having conversations for so many years, especially since, I moved across the country 6.5 years ago. A lot of real life, real adult things were happening to me and had been happening to me for a while, but it really hit then when I had moved out on my own. And I was like, wow, this is really adult stuff. So our conversations really started there. And I think as time went on and I really went through some difficult things, I would go to my friends and my friends would give me advice on the difficult situations. And then I'd be like, well, my dad said this though. And they'd be like, wow, that is really cool that he said that, or that you can talk to him about those things. And I was so surprised that they had that reaction to it, because it was so normal for me. And so as time went on and they would go through difficult situations, I would go through difficult situations, they would be like, well, so what did your dad say about it? Did you ask your dad? I know specifically a few friends that would be like, well, what did your dad say? Or I loved that he said that. So for me, the podcast idea, and I think why I'm here today, if you do know me from the internet, I've done YouTube for 7 years. I've been on Instagram. I've done TikTok. So many various platforms of my career have been involved, or has been involved in my career. So this is just another, people would be like, well, why podcast? You've done music, all this. So I think that coming from the reaction of people and hearing the advice from my dad, and then telling my friends, being like, well, this is what my dad said. And they'd be like, wow, you talked to him about that? And that's what he said? That's pretty cool. So that's where the root of the idea had started for me, in the back of my subconscious. I think what really drove this, and this is the last thing that my dad said, recently we lost someone close to us, my grandma, his mom. And there were so many amazing, first of all, fun, goofy times, because she was silly yet elegant. Mm-hmm. But there was a lot of great conversations that I was able to record. And not that we should be whipping out our phones every second we hear someone speak or that we love or take a picture of it, but that I captured. And when, at her memorial, when I played some of this stuff back, it was so valuable to carry on to other people. And I think when my dad and I have these conversations, not only are they an hour plus long, and we won't keep you guys for too long. Where our goal is an hour for episodes. But to conclude my explanation, I would say the cherry on top, where I think my dad and I just aligned in the decision, it was like kind of a no-brainer. Let's get this going. Once, my grandma, she passed, it was like, wow, it would be so cool just to have this, whether there's one person listening right now or a bunch of you guys, or people or friends or family we have. It's more so to just carry on our very vulnerable, open, also very curious conversations about very basic general things in life that we go through. To conclude this, I would say my grandma was the turning point, definitely, for me to be like, all right, Dad, are you down to this? Because I think I looked at, how did we actually conclude? Did I just look at you and say, let's do this? And you were like, I'm down?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, we joked about it. Genelle said something, it's been 7 years ago. She came to me and said, hey, I'm moving to California. And as a parent, and I'm hoping and trusting that there are going to be some parents listening to this, because that would be one of our goals, is to, again, share some thoughts on this stuff. And, my initial reaction was, what? You're moving to California? It's crazy out there. You can't do that, and so forth. But the other side of me was like, this is one of those times, you've got to let your kids skin their knees to kind of learn. Although that's
Which you always let me do.
Well, I try. It's hard because of safety. You're concerned about those types of things, and you want you to never you always want your kids to be safe. I mean, that's what parents do. But at the same time, I trusted your judgment. You showed me over the years that you make good decisions, and then I knew that you know how to take care of yourself. So while it was difficult, I felt like this would be such a growing opportunity. So when you've launched your career and have accomplished so many great things, I think when we were, having these discussions, and especially when I came out for your birthday and we had a table of your friends.
Oh, yes. I forgot to include that in my,
yeah. And I think, as we had joked about it and, we have some, your siblings, one of your siblings is a musician, and we talked about doing, a band and just, again, saying things sometimes you never do. I came out for your birthday. It was really cool to engage with some of your friends who are at different stages of life, but there's similar questions and thoughts about what's happening and
right.
and so forth. So it was just engaged. It was a great conversation. They were very patient with me. So often today we start a conversation with somebody and where they're looking at our phones, or we're all ADD because of the information that comes at us so quickly. We're always jumping around. You ever notice you try to have a long conversation with somebody anymore today, and everyone's all twitched out. They just can't focus, And so anyway, your friends were a lot of fun to be around and so forth. And I think it was from there we said, and they had made some comments. And this idea that you're bringing these two perspectives, and obviously as my daughter, and I raised you and along that path of the mistakes that I made and the different things you've been through and so forth, there was like, wow, there's something here. And even some of your friends commented our relationship is different. And that was built long ago. Mm-hmm. And it's only natural that when parents are raising their kids kind of want to be away from their parents, which is a natural thing, but then they come back, hopefully.
I have a lot to say there. And to conclude the birthday thing, it was really cool. My dad always, for the past few years, has flown out for my birthday. Last year he came out. I did a show at the Viper Room, which was super iconic and very cool for me. It was a small crowd, like 70 people, but it was pretty cool. Yep. And he was there for that. And then this year was a big year for me, and he came out, and it was funny because my dad kind of moved around the room because he's a great host. He's very social. He gets that from his mother. She was very social, where I kind of struggle with that a little bit more and being a good host, but that's a different discussion. But he did move around the room a lot, and all throughout the night, if not afterwards, and even now I'll continue to talk to friends, they're like, oh, you're good. You've got Barry. You've got Mr. Selden, So they all got a cool piece of my dad, whether he was being goofy or I don't know what you were talking to Francina about in the kitchen, but clearly my friend Francina, shout out to her. She was like, wow, your dad and I, we just had a great discussion, whatever. So that's kind of like the birthday thing, and I think now my question for you is, this is good for the intro video. Would you say that you and I got along as I grew up from young child to now? Because my memory is a little blurry. So would you say that we got along?
Yes. Well, I don't, getting along is an interesting way to say it. Okay. When you're a parent, you're in charge, right? Your kid's growing up and you have a responsibility. And that is to make sure that the child is safe, the child is, taken care of, food, fed and all that kind of stuff. But also that the child is building a, some moral compass, some kind of idea what's right, what's wrong. I mean, I didn't want the schools teaching you that. I wanted to teach you that, right? So, but there's pushback along the way. As a child naturally becomes independent, they, I think this will be one of the things we'll get into later, but a child by nature is born and is completely dependent on their parents. And soon as they start walking and being able to be mobile, they want to move away from their parents. That's where no, don't do that. And the child's like, goes ahead and does it anyway. But that's your nature to do that. That's inside of you to be that way. So a lot of things happen at that point. Parents get frustrated. They get angry with the child. maybe even, discipline the child in the wrong way or so forth. But ultimately, with you, you were a very strong-willed individual. And so I read a book early on about strong fathers, strong daughters, or something along. I don't remember.
Is that the name of it?
I think it is. And
Okay.
we should give that, the exact title, because it would be I would encourage.
If you guys are watching the YouTube, we'll link books as
There you
we
go.
mentioned down below.
If there's a father out there that has a strong-willed daughter, it was really helpful, because what you don't want to do is crush the spirit of a child like that, right? You want to encourage, because I knew that your strong will would help you in life, but you had to have guardrails with it, right? You just couldn't just go out there and just crush everybody and be this uncontrollable, out of control child. But it was difficult for you to know that I was trying to help you, but you didn't know that, because you thought when I wouldn't let you do what you wanted, that was being, hey, no, you can't do that. Where I was saying, no, there are limits to what you can do. So that developed our relationship, back to your question, where it took you a long time to understand that. And we went through this process, and then, some other things that we'll get into happened in your life and our life. And so that changed that dynamic. But eventually you could see that I had your best interest. I don't know when that light went on. I think it was a combination of things. But you knew that I had your back. It took you a while. I mean, we're talking years. And not that you thought I was the enemy or anything like that. You knew I loved you, but I think you figured out, whoa, my dad's in my corner most of the time. So I think that helped develop our relationship, and that's why along the way I encouraged you to do the things that because you were a very outgoing, passionate kid, and you kind of knew what you wanted most of the time. Like, I remember one of the funny examples is when you were running track, I said to you, you should run long distance. And you looked at me and go, Dad, I don't want to run long distance. I don't want to sweat and it hurts. And I went, okay, you wanted short distance because you didn't want to go out. I remember you ran with the Cars country team a few times. And so that was where you see then the child comes into their own, right? They understand themselves. And then and then they have to go out and make mistakes. This is the thing. A child needs to make mistakes. A child needs to, and an adults do too, by the way. And then all these things help develop us as individuals. And I think it's kind of what led to this podcast, is that what we're trying to do here is not tell you that our way or our, quote, standard, as we decided to call this, is the only standard. Oftentimes, you have to develop those yourself. But what we found was there's a lot of people that are walking through life with no standards.
Literally, or boundaries, nothing.
Nothing.
Yes.
And and as a result, they tend to get in pickles. Most people have no standards, or they've let society kind of dictate their standards. And they feel like through peer pressure or societal pressure, they have to follow along like sheep. And that, that just doesn't work. And so, but what I think I see oftentimes at every age, so this isn't your age group, my age group, this is every age group.
Every single one.
Is that people, they have problems in their life. One of the things I said to Genelle early on, and I had to say it oftentimes you have to say things a lot to, not just to Genelle, but this is for anybody, for it to sink in. I said, people worry about things they can't control versus worrying about what they can control. And when people make a bad decision and that leads to some problem in their life, own up to it. I always told the kids, I said, man, just take responsibility, learn from it, and move forward. Don't blame someone else. Don't be a victim. Oh, Chicken Little, the sky is falling type of stuff. And so that relationship that Genelle and I developed had a lot to do with that type of thing. If you come to me with a problem, I'm willing to help. You have to be in a situation. Oftentimes, Genelle comes to me with a problem. I say, well, what do you think you should do? And it's funny, in life, there's people who always want someone else to tell them what they should do. The way you learn how to figure things out is by asking questions. So I would say to Genelle, well, what do you think you should do? And then she'd think about it, and she might say, and say, well, most of what you're saying is good. I don't make a couple tweaks here. So what happens when you do that with somebody is they feel like they owned the decision to make the right choice. So as we thought about this podcast, we're thinking, hey, we're not the experts in health, but we've gone through some things. We have diets. eating,
routines,
leaky gut.
Yep.
I mean, we can go on.
Nutritionist,
Vegetarian,
yeah.
non-vegetarian, this or that, and so forth. And whether we subscribe to this, say, over here, doesn't
standard.
Yeah, that standard. There you
Yep.
go. Doesn't mean that you will,
Yeah.
but you might give you food for thought as to what we've concluded based on what the decisions we've made. And so just like our next podcast is going to be about dating.
Right. And I think what's cool about what my dad just said is my dad and I are both, for the most part, I guess maybe I'll speak for myself, are very logical thinkers. So when there's an issue, we try our best. For me, at least for me, I go and try to solve the problem. When it comes to diet, dating, relationships, friendships, I call my dad. I want a solution. Taxes, financing, moving. I want a solution. I want, a question answered. So then from there, I can set my standard. I can make my decisions based off of people in my life that I trust, aka my dad. And I think because he thinks so logically and very, not simple, but explains it in a way where it's like A, B, C, D, make your decision. This is what life is, like. Not that we have all the answers. I then set my standard. Now, sometimes my standards has not been the same as my dad's.
That's right.
Paying things on time, doing my taxes on time, right? My standard has been a little bit different at times where then when I get burned, my dad's like, well, there have just been times where our standards separately have been different. And so what we really want you guys to understand, or anyone who's listening, we hope that you do take away a perspective that can either help you conclude your own standards and your own path and take some of our mistakes. And then hopefully in return, we want this to be a two-way street. We want to hear feedback and we want to hear even advice on your end. If you felt that we delivered some information that maybe needed some tweaks, or that you experienced and you did a different way and it turned out great or it turned out horrible. So we really want to make sure that in this intro episode that it's told that this is a two-way street. We'll be taking suggestions on what your favorite coffee is. We want suggestions on topics that we cover because we will be covering a lot of health. As some of you may know, I was raised a vegetarian my entire life. There was an option where at an age, our parents did allow us to then eat meat, but we are raised very plant-based as young kids. So my dad has that whole perspective. And then he now isn't fully, right? So we have a lot of perspectives and a lot of things. And I really hope that when you guys are listening to this or you're watching this, you take away our bit of life. And I think a big reason why I'm so excited, and you can maybe say like maybe what you want out of this too, why I'm so excited to start this journey is it allows me to discuss things that maybe I'm not the most smart about. And I can ask my dad here, because when I was just alone on my YouTube channel, it's kind of hard sometimes to just talk by myself. So it's good to have a second person by my side, especially someone who raised me and did his best, especially me. And then I have two brothers. So anyways, what are you kind of looking forward to?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, we have a lot of topics.
We do.
I think we're going to, and what'll be fun is we'll range the topic. I mean, they're going to be all over the place.
They are.
And, but I think,
but that's how we speak.
Well, that's right.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. It's about better living, right? So, one of the things I try to share is the quality of life, that we all get the same as time. You all get the same 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Rich people who are bazillionaires, can't buy more time. Now they can delegate and do things like that, but they get the same amount of time. So I'll be asking the question, how are you using your time? Are you getting the most out of the time that you have? And that is, even if it's for every day you wake up, are you making the decision to be happy and move forward with your life in some manner? What can you change to improve? Because many times the things that Genelle and I have talked about, we'll talk about more than once, because it's incremental. When you change things in life, or you change to create a habit. Genelle will tell you that we've talked about things where we say, well, we already talked about that. Not to be belittling of each other, but just like, hey, remember we had that conversation. Sometimes some of us, it takes longer to learn than others. Some of us, we learn quickly. So our goal is here. Think about it this way. Maybe try it. You may find yourself saying, you know what, that's actually some insightful information. We're going to learn from, I've learned from Genelle, which has been kind of fun because I'm not one to suggest that you can't learn. You can learn from everybody if you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
If you're listening. So, we're not talking about degrees or any of that, went to an Ivy League school. It's nothing about, it's living life. The person who can articulate what they're absorbing by living life. You said about being logical. Logical isn't to try and suggest that I'm smarter than someone else. Logic is, I tried this and it didn't work, so I tried this and it did work. That's logic.
We should look up the definition.
Well, it become. I'm not saying that's the exact definition, but at some point, if you're not learning and you're doing the same thing over, that's pretty illogical. One day we'll have someone in the back will say, "Hey, Billy, can you look that up for us?"
We'll be like, "Yo, Joe Schmo."
Yeah, can you look that up? Where I was going with that is my mom. She would say things sometimes, and hopefully we'll share some recordings of her.
Mm-hmm.
And she'd say it, and you just look at her and you go, that makes a lot of sense. You could walk away from that and go, whatever. She's old. She doesn't know anything. Or you can go, you know what, there's something there. There's something kind of, and that's what I saw you doing more of, is just going, there's something there I need to think about.
Wait, so with that, the third definition on the definition of logical, natural or sensible given the circumstances. So that's true. So something that comes natural, works out. The other definition is characterized by or capable of clear, sound reasoning. Mm-hmm. And then the other one is of or according to the rules of logic or formal argument.
Yeah. So I guess to summarize, because we can make
we want to keep the intro one.
Keep it tight.
Yeah.
And we hope to do that. I know that there's, you can get long-winded and people, I know how I feel when I listen to podcasts, people after a while, I'm like, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. So we will say we are pretty good expert-wise in podcast listening. My dad has been listening to podcasts for
a long time.
Dad, you've been on.
I used to send them to you all the time.
Would.
Hey, listen to this one.
You would years ago. So
we'll mention some of those in the future. Maybe we'll get get some shout outs from them. But I've always been a person that you never stop learning. I still, will. Hey, it's funny. Growing up, we had encyclopedias, and
I haven't heard that word.
And so my mom, they were World Book encyclopedias. So my mom, she'd say, "Go look it up." So back in, not that I'm that old, but back in the day,
back in the 1920s,
get out of here. Back in the day, we'd go down or if you were in school and you'd go to the school library and you'd pull out an encyclopedia and you'd look up whatever it is you were going to look up. So being inquisitive is actually a really good thing, And so what we're doing is, while we're doing this podcast, we want you to be inquisitive, those that are listening to us, but we are also going to be inquisitive. This is why this is not sort of a one-way conversation type of thing. And we thought the yin and yang of our different generations would be part of that, as well as our relationship, which may be considered unusual for a father-daughter at this stage of our life. I'm going to encourage and hope that more parents can have this type of relationship, because it's such a beautiful thing, and we enjoy these conversations and doing this. So that's why, again, why we're here. So I think, we hope you come along for the ride. Hopefully we'll also talk about coffee, and because we both like coffee.
We do. We're drinking coffee right now.
Yes. And we're going to talk about all kinds of those types of things as well. But we'll also get into some meaty stuff, like the next one, dating.
Yes.
That should be interesting. Our
mission here is just to give our mistakes out, share, especially mine. As much as I have tried my best to make the best decisions, coming from experience. I've seen other people in my young youth make horrible decisions. I've tried to take that and use that. My mission is just to share still my mistakes and my mess ups while also getting a perspective from my dad, who thinks logically and isn't very biased. Obviously, I'm his daughter, but if you were to ask him or meet him in person and you ask him the same thing, he would tell you pretty much the same thing. He wouldn't base it just on, now maybe there have been certain times where he would say something because I'm his daughter, right? But pretty much if my friend Francina approached him in the kitchen, my friend Vanessa, shout out Vanessa, anyone really, he would give that same perspective. And the same goes for me too. When my dad tells me stuff or he's telling me a funny story about other family members yesterday in the car, I'm expressing myself in a funny way,
right.
But because not that it's my dad, even if my friend were telling me that story. So our mission here is to give you perspective, laugh a little bit about family,
Definitely
friends,
laugh.
dating.
Gotta laugh.
Yeah.
At each other too.
At each other. We're both goofy and we're going to mess up too.
Yes.
Let's just start by saying we may not say the best things at the best times, but I'm going to try my best. I have a college degree, so
Oh, whoa.
no. But we're gonna try our best, and this is really exciting, and it'll be a new adventure for my dad and I to go on together and to make new friends, people, and build a community. We really love community. We love, curious, open-minded people.
Agreed.
So,
And with that, I would just say, welcome aboard.
Welcome aboard.
And, give us the comments. Good, the Bad, the Ugly is a great movie from many years ago.
Yep.
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
In case, for those of you who don't know. But yeah, we look forward to it. And let's get on with the real meaty stuff.
Yep.
Dating.
Buckle up.
Buckle up.
Follow us. Subscribe for more. And if you're watching YouTube, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Right on.
Let's go.
Grab your coffee. Let's go.
Bye.
See ya.